Hey guys, I'm GML Waffle, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create this water effect that you're currently seeing. Alright, so to get started, as you'll see, I already have some sprites created, a wall object created, and a room. So going through these, you're probably wondering why our water sprite looks so weird. So why do I have this red circle outlined by black instead of just a PNG blue circle? Well, I'll be getting into that a little bit later, but the important things to know for now is that this circle is a 12 by 12, and the circle itself is actually 8 by 8 with a 2-pixel black border around it. And another important thing to remember is to center these sprites. And then the water is just the exact same one, but it's pink, and again, I'll be going over why they look so weird later. And then we have a sprite for our wall. This one doesn't have to be centered, it's just a regular 32 by 32 black sprite. And then our object for our wall is a physics object set with a box collision shape. And it's always important to go to modify collision shape and check that the collision is over your sprite. And the density is set to 0 so it doesn't move in our room. So we can hit OK on that, and the room we have set up doesn't have anything in it other than this setup that you saw previously. So you're probably wondering if these are separate objects or not. Well, they're actually just the same 32 by 32, but if you go into the Objects panel, you can change the rotation and the scale. Or when you create an object, you'll notice these little squares around it. You can drag those to change the scaling of your object. So I'll just delete that one. But there's the setup we have. And also you have to go to physics and check that room is physics world, because this project is going to be using physics. And I've set the Y scale for our gravity to 30. Alright, so with introductions out of the way, we can go ahead and jump into creating our water. So we're going to create a new object, and we're going to call it obj_water. Now you don't have to assign a sprite to it, and you don't have to check uses physics. But the first thing we're going to add is a step event, and add some code to it. So the first thing we're going to do is create a physics particle. So we're going to say physics particle create. And inside, we are going to say flags, which is a variable we will create later. We want the x position to be the x position that it's created in the room. Same for y. Now the next two arguments are the x velocity and y velocity. We're going to set these to 0 for now, as we don't want them to move in any particular direction when they're created. Color is going to be set to C_white. Alpha is going to be 1, and category for now can just be 1. Alright, so going through this, we'll come back to flags in just a few minutes, but of course we have our x and y position that the object is going to be created, or rather the particle. We have a 0 and 0 for the x and y velocity because we don't want it to be going off and moving in any certain direction. We just want gravity to take care of that for us. Then we have our color. So the default you want to do is C_white. If I change this to C_blue or something else, it would override and it would give it a weird hue over the actual sprite. Then the alpha is 1 because we want it to be at full opacity. And the category is actually pretty important and kind of cool how it works. So if I just copy this and paste it 3 times, and change this to 2 and change this to 3, we now have 3 separate particles, all in different categories. So when we draw our particles later, we can then call on this to see which kind of particle we should be creating. If you want to create a particle that has the same settings for all of them, you would use 0, as that would set every particle that is created to the category 0. But for now, we're just going to have the water object set to 1. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is add a way to destroy the particles once they go outside of the room. We're going to add this because if you have too many particles, it can cause your game to crash, as especially with this tutorial, there's going to be well over 4,000 particles on the screen at once. So, in order to destroy them as they go outside the room, we're going to say physics particle delete region, and then you get an option to choose what kind of shape for the region. You can do a box, a circle, or a polygon. We're just going to go with a box for a square area that the objects will be destroyed. So then we open it up. Alright, so this takes 4 values. The first value is the starting X position. So we want it to start outside of our room to the right. So we're going to say room width plus 32. This is going to take the width of our room and add 32 to it. The next thing we're going to say is room height, because this is the Y value, so we want it to start at the bottom right hand corner. So this is just going to set the X and the Y down to our bottom right hand corner plus 32 to the right. Next is the half width and half height, which basically determine how wide and how tall the box is going to be. So for the width, just to be safe, we're going to set it to 320. And for the height, we don't have to worry too much. We're just going to set it to 32. Alright, so we're done creating our particles now. What we have to do is set these flags. So basically what flags are, or as they're called down here, type flags. Flags control the way a particle behaves or acts. So, in order to set this, we're going to set them in the create event. So we're going to call that variable flags, and we're going to set it equal to 5 for physics underscore particle underscore flag underscore water. This is the default property for particles in the physics system. Basically how it's going to act is like a little blob. So if you think of gelatin and you drop it, it's going to bounce a little bit and it's not really going to do much, but it'll be affected by gravity and physics. So if there's a slope, it'll rotate. Then we're going to add this symbol, which basically just means and we are going to add 5 for physics underscore particle underscore flag underscore vicious. The way this one behaves is it basically takes all of your particles and causes them to group together or be attracted to each other. So with water, we want it to seem like they're a group of water instead of just multiple separate droplets. So this will just add a nice little effect that makes them seem like they're grouping together. Then we're going to add one more, and we're going to say physics underscore particle underscore flag underscore color mixing. What this one's going to do is it's going to take particles that are near each other and it's going to blend their color just a little bit, only slightly, but it does add a nice effect. So that is how we set the behavior for our particles, and we assigned each behavior to the variable flags, which is called upon as a particle is created. So the next thing we need to add is a way to actually draw or display our physics particles. So to do this, we're going to go to add event, draw, and just regular draw. Throw some code in there. Now, the first thing we're going to do is say physics particle draw. Type mask is just going to be flags. It's going to call upon those flags that we set for the behavior. The category is going to be 1 because remember we set our water category to 1. So we want to create that particular particle. The sprite we're going to create it with is SPR underscore water. And the subimage is going to be 0 since there's only one image in that sprite. So if we added this object into our room right now and go ahead and run the game, you'll see that it's now creating these water seeming like objects, but obviously they're not blue. They have that black outline still, but they are behaving properly and acting like water would. So the first thing we're going to do is remove that black outline and change the color to blue. So to do this, we go back into our draw and move this down, and above it, we are going to say draw set blend mode extended. Inside here, we're going to say bm underscore env underscore source underscore alpha, and the second argument is going to be bm underscore env underscore source underscore color. Then below, we're going to say draw set blend, not blonde, blend mode, and we are going to reset it back to bm underscore normal. Okay, so what this is going to do is in this first part, this bm env source alpha is going to take the alpha color, which in our case would be the black outline around the sprite, and it's going to remove it. Then it's going to take the opposite of whatever the source color is, and that's what color it's going to display. So after that, it's going to draw our physics particle, and then we want to make sure that we always set blend mode back to BM normal. If we don't, everything that's being drawn in the room will be affected by this code, and that would look pretty bad. So now, if we go ahead and run this, you'll see that we're now getting these really nice water particles. They're blue, they don't have that nasty black outline, but as soon as the objects get down here, you'll notice something really weird with their collision. So if you look closely, you can see these little spaces in between each one of the objects. It really takes away from the water effect and makes it seem more like it's a bunch of separate little droplets that are all just kind of colliding together. So we'll go over that in a minute on how to fix it, but first you're probably wondering, how did I get these colors for the sprites? So how did I know that red was going to turn into blue when it took opposite? So basically, I just chose the color that I wanted, which in this case was this blue color here. I filled in the circle, and when you run it, you're going to get the opposite of whatever you want. So you just take the opposite of whatever you want, apply it to your sprite, and then since this is the opposite of what you want, you're going to get the result of what you want, which in our case is a nice blue water sprite. So we're done with that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how to fix that water effect not seeming so much like a water effect. So if we go back into the create event, we're going to set a few things for our physics particles. So the first thing we want to change is its radius for collision. We want the objects to overlap each other just a little bit so you don't see those gaps in between them. This will create a really nice effect that makes it seem like it's all one large mass of water rather than several separate objects. So in order to do that, we're going to say physics underscore particle underscore set radius. Now remember, our sprites might be 12 by 12, but the actual circle itself is 8 by 8. So the radius we should set for it should be 4, since the radius is half of the circle. The next thing we're going to change is the density. This one is going to be particularly important when you have large bodies of the object. If you don't change the density of the object, you'll notice that as they collide with each other, they're trying to push each other away at the same time that they're trying to pull themselves together. This is due to the fact that their regular collision mode with water is to bounce off of each other and kind of act like jello. But with flag vicious, we're setting them to go together. So when you get those two things, they're constantly going back and forth, and the inertia between them is increasing. So the more it increases, the more they bounce, and it comes out to a really nasty effect. So to change the density, we're going to say physics particle set density, and whereas 1 would be the normal value, we are going to change it to half that. Alright, so this is all you have to add in order to create a nice water effect for your game. If we go ahead and run it, we now have our water droplets, And if you look closely, they're all kind of overlapping each other just a bit, just enough to make it seem like it's a group of water, one large body of water. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is in our step event, we are going to create a new particle. So we want to create this new particle every time we press the mouse button. So we're going to say if mouse check button, mouse button underscore right, or for this we'll just use left. So when we left press, we are going to copy this code here and paste it in. So when we press the left button, we are going to create a new particle, which you can change by changing the category to 2. So this creates a new particle that will act and behave in the exact same way as our first particle does. So this first particle is our water. This second particle is going to be our green water. One thing we want to make sure is that this is moved to the bottom, just as a safety precaution. So in the draw event, we're going to draw this new particle. So we're going to copy that and paste it down. And for our category, we are going to say 2. So this is going to draw the second category of particles. And we don't want it to be the same sprite. We want it to be our green one. So we're going to say SPR underscore green water. So running this now, we have our regular water particle being created, but if we press the left mouse button, it now creates a green one alongside it. So say you wanted to create that particle at whatever position your mouse was in the room. Well, in order to do that, we go back to the step event, and as we create this particle, we want to set the creation X to mouse underscore X, and the creation Y to mouse underscore Y. So if we run this now, we have our regular blue water again, but if we press here, we'll get the green, and it'll just create wherever our mouse is at in the room. One more thing we're going to talk a little bit about is how to handle thousands of different particles in your room. So if we go into the draw event, we want to draw how many particles are being drawn on the screen. So we're going to say draw text, and we're just going to draw this text at 48 by 48. And the string is going to be a pre-built variable called physics particle count. So what this will do is it'll display how many particles are on screen at any given moment in the game. Not really on screen, but how many have been created. But since we are destroying them as they go off screen, it's basically how many are on screen. So if we run this now, up here in the top left, we're now getting a count for how many particles are being created in our room. So if I just let this time lapse to the moment that the game fills up, alright, so we're getting to the point here where objects are sliding down off screen, making collision with the box that we set to destroy them. So if you notice here, you'll notice that they're still being created, but they're also being destroyed. However, there are more being created than there are being destroyed at the moment, because it is constantly creating them every step, whereas this is just destroying them as they get to it. So if we let this run more, alright, so here we are, fatal error in action number 1 of draw event for obj underscore water. Fatal error, cannot create vertex buffer of size 715,392 bytes, blah blah blah. All of this information really isn't important. What is important is the number of particles that we had on screen. So we had about 5,000 particles created on screen before the game decided to crash. You have to understand that each one is being rendered as a physics object and more or less a physics circle, so each one is going to have several vertexes. So just for example, we'll say each circle has maybe 10 vertexes, right? So take 5,000 particles times 10, and that's how many points on screen it has to constantly render collision between and draw. So that's just something to be mindful of when you're working with this, is the limitations that GameMaker has when creating these. However, I don't see any situation where you'll have more than 5,000 on screen at any given moment. I just set this example up so I could show you what the limitations are. So this has been a tutorial on how to create a water effect in GameMaker using physics particles. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, comment what you thought down below, and don't forget to subscribe for future videos. As always, I'll see you guys next time.